Hello everyone, welcome to my 10,000 subscriber Q&A special. Thank you guys for giving me so many good questions, and I am looking forward to answering them in just a moment or so. But before we do that, let's go over the results from the poll that I asked you. What are your favorite Let's Plays series from my channel? And pretty much the results were as I expected. So that just kind of confirm some of my views as to what what is popular. Although I did expect Crusader Kings 2 to be a bit higher on the results, just primarily just because it gets so many views. There could be a number of reasons. Maybe a lot of people enjoy watching them, but they're not actually their favorites. Which is perfectly fine. But in general, just very much in line with what I expected. Obviously, there's a pretty good chance that people put down like Suikoden and Japanese RPGs at the same time, or at least some people did. And that was also what I expected. There was a good suggestion to use Google Forms instead next time because you have more options available. Apparently, I have not had a chance to look into that. Obviously, I'd already asked this one, and I didn't want to put up a new video and say, oh, here, do this instead. If I do something similar to this again later, I will definitely keep that in mind. I was a little bit disappointed when I discovered that Straw Poll didn't have the capability of having, a whole crap ton of results. So, yeah. And I mean, I basically discovered it, just as I was making the poll in order to do the video, and I didn't want to set the video back or not do it at all, not do the poll at all. So, these things happen. But the results were, like I said, pretty much as I expected. I will include a link to the results in the description below, so if you guys want to take a look at that yourself, you can do so. For the Q&A section, I've divided it into 3 sections of questions, and people who asked multiple questions, your questions would have been divided up appropriately. The 3 sections will be questions related to Let's Plays and the channel itself, or channel content. The second section will be basically like personal interests and gaming, outside of the channel itself. And then finally, just a kind of a silly, random, fun, trolley type section. So, we'll get some, end it with the fun stuff. And keep in mind that, especially for some of those fun questions, I may troll you, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, for the Q&A, I'm just going to put up a montage of photos that I took in Egypt and Jordan, so there's a little visual thing to look at. I still have not done any of the Patreon videos specific to my trips, but I do plan to do so eventually. So just enjoy those. It may loop back depending on how long it takes me to get through all the questions. But let's get started right away. So in the Let's Plays channel section, our first question is from Jasmine Rivers, who asks, do you ever intend on making in real-life videos? Let me elaborate. Some LPers make videos showing their collections of figures, board games, etc., and I think it's pretty cool to have an insight into the person behind the LP, quote-unquote, as it were. I bet you have some super neato ancient history stuff that would be awesome to showcase. Part of the problem is that, well, there's a few things. The lighting in at my place is awful. It's just awful in so many ways, and it would be best if I had some actual photography light or, mock-ups of that or something like that, jury-rigged setups for that. And I do not. On top of that, I have too much stuff. It's like piled everywhere right now, so there really isn't it wouldn't make good showcasing. But I could definitely take some pictures and maybe do a photo montage like I'm doing right now with a few of them. Um, I don't think I ever really considered it beyond a few things, and it might not be a bad idea. I'll definitely keep it in mind if I can think of a way to do it. Get the pictures up. In an interesting format, have something interesting to say about it, and most importantly, position things in such a way that they don't look awful based on the lighting or the room contents and backgrounds and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of like I've got shelves of DVDs and Blu-rays, mostly anime. Not that I watch a whole lot anymore, but I used to watch like just about everything that came out here in the United States. And all of those shelves are filled with other stuff in front of the Blu-rays and DVDs, like just old computer parts, hard drives, DVDs that haven't been properly shelved yet, stuff like that. So it's just kind of a crazy, insane mess. And I'm awful at getting things organized and straightened out for that kind of thing, because that takes effort. But yeah, I'll definitely consider that in the future if I can think of a way to do that. Ben Clark's has a few questions, and I've split them up because they varied on content. His first, third, and fifth questions were, what are your PC specs? Right now, the one that I record on is an Intel i7 3.5 gigahertz, 60 gigs of RAM, and a Radeon RX 580 series video card, and not enough hard drive space. A lot of the equipment is pretty old in it. The video card is fairly recent, but it was within my budget. I have not had an opportunity, and I cannot afford upgrading it at the moment. So that's when I can afford it, kind of thing. I would definitely like to, but I would also like to replace the laptop that I do non-recording stuff on. I respond to my comments on it, read my emails, that sort of thing. That laptop is 10 years old. Now, it was top of the line, like absolute bleeding edge, what you could do in a laptop at the time. So it's going okay, but it's definitely running not as well as it used to. So I would definitely like to replace those things, but money is tight right now. Third question was, why did you name your channel AuldDragon? I didn't actually name the channel AuldDragon. If you actually check my About page, you will see that the channel was created in 2007, and I didn't start uploading videos, Let's Play videos, until 2011. I created it so that I could comment and stuff like that, and it was only later it was kind of like, oh, well, I already have a YouTube channel. May as well just start posting the, Let's Play videos, when I decided to start doing it, kind of thing. Rather than like create a new channel. I don't think that even occurred to me or anything like that. So it's just, my username, basically. And it's a username that I've used for quite a while. There really isn't a backstory to it. I chose it and just started using it because it fit and I couldn't think of anything else. There is a group called AuldDragons that has been around since like the earliest days of the internet, and there was just a thing where you could sign up and say, you're a member of the AuldDragons or something like that. And I never really did much. I mean, they had like I think they had forums and stuff like that, and they may still do. I don't really know what's going on with them these days. They are still around. But yeah, it was just like sign up, and most of the people on there were, something dragon. That's what they were signing up as. So I was like, all right, well, my current names don't really fit. My current usernames don't really fit. This was like late 90s. So I just like, you know, what sounds good? Oh, AuldDragon. I kind of like the sound of that. Okay, boom, done. And I just started using that as a username on forums and stuff like that afterwards. So, you know, when I created a YouTube account so that I could comment, it was just natural to choose AuldDragon. And then when I started uploading videos, that was my YouTube account. So that's why it's AuldDragon. So yeah, not really much of a story. It doesn't really mean much. I was not, when I chose it, I was not thinking of Ald as in old. It was just, I liked the sound of it together kind of thing. So it just fit. Any future plans for your channel? Fifth question from Ben Clarks. Other than just, you know, more games and stuff like that, not really. I don't you know, I'm not planning on changing the direction. I'm not planning on changing how I handle it, like going to the currently popular mode of sampling games where you put it up like 5 or 10 videos of the latest game that comes out, you know, every week or something like that. Partly because I see Let's Plays for me as a way to finish games that I hadn't finished, or a way to play games that I enjoyed and want to finish again, you know, go through the whole story, or games that I want to showcase for you guys, you know, in its entirety. So, you know, while there are certainly going to be times when Let's Plays won't finish, those are going to be fairly rare. And right now, they're primarily the Patreon rewards for games that, you know, someone wants to see me play a bit of, you know, and I'll do that, but, you know, it may not be necessarily my thing, or maybe time is just not what I would like to play through the entire thing, or maybe I just don't understand it as well as I would like to do a full playthrough. Various reasons why I may not do a full completion of a Patreon reward game. Those are primarily going to be the things that don't get played to completion on my channel, at least right now. And I don't really foresee that changing in the future. It's always possible that it might, but, you know, right now I don't anticipate the format changing. So, thank you for those questions. Larry and the Mage asks, oh, obvious question. When would you show your face? When Hell Freeze is over? You know, something like that. So, yeah, if you see face cam from me, you know then that Hell has frozen over. So, you know, if you want to go someplace chilly, nice vacation destination. Andrew Lynch asks a few questions, and I moved one of his to another section. But his first question is, as far as questions, when do you plan to hit up Wild Arms, and who will be Ald in that one? I don't know. I don't have any real significant experience with the franchise, or the first game. Didn't play it when it came out. I did get it for, on my PlayStation 3 from the PlayStation Network, but I never really had an opportunity to actually play through it more than like a half an hour, I think. So I really don't know the game very well, or any of the games very well. I certainly don't know enough to say who would be Ald in them. But I'm kind of working my way through a lot of JRPGs, so there is definitely a chance that a good chance that it'll show up eventually. When, I really would not be able to say. If or when, I should say, because I'm not committing to it. I don't want to definitely commit to it. But there's a pretty good chance it'll show up eventually. When you hit Final Fantasy VI, will you give us your best take on a Kefka laugh? Oh, absolutely. Admittedly, being able to get some of the, you know, being able to get the best laugh is going to be kind of situational. I may just have some allergies or a cold or something like that, or just not be quite up to it. But you know, when I get to the dialogue where he's laughing, oh, I will be doing Kefka laughs. Fourth question from Andrew Lynch. His third question, I moved to another section, as I said. Do you plan on taking advantage of the fact Stardew Valley has multiplayer now? I would like to. I mean, it doesn't yet, but it will soon. That's coming out. I don't know that they've announced an exact date. And watch, now I discover that it's been out for a few days, and I didn't realize it. But I would like to. Obviously, I would need to get someone to play with, and I do have some ideas on who I could ask. I just need to ask them. So, we'll see. It is definitely something that I want to do when the multiplayer is released, however. Which of your Let's Plays would you personally suggest to someone? The thing about that is, you know, some of the things that I really enjoyed playing, you know, would they necessarily enjoy it? I don't know. But I think if I had to, you know, sit down and just say, here are some of the go-to ones. I would definitely say Xenogears, because I love that game so much, and I recommend that game to everyone, everywhere, for all time. That is definitely a significant game to me, personally. And I really, really enjoyed doing the Let's Play of it. I would also recommend War in Middle-earth. I did 3 runs through that game, pretty short. It ended up being you know, I did it as I think a Christmas special a few years ago. Hadn't played it in a really long time, and I remembered having a lot of trouble as a kid, and not having trouble as an adult. It was weird, but it was a lot of fun. It was crazy. There were it just got ridiculous on how I won the game multiple times. But I had a blast replaying through it, and it's you know, a really, really early real-time strategy game, which is unusual. And it's based on Tolkien, which is just, you know, an interesting setting. So I recommend that. And I played 3 different versions of it, so one of the reasons why I would recommend it is being able to see the differences in the game that you know, when it came out, depending on what kind of computer system you had. I got to play 2 versions of it that I had not played as a kid, and man, do I regret not being able to do that. I would have been blown away as a kid, even more than I was by that game originally. What else? I would recommend Suikoden 3, because that's my personal favorite Suikoden game. I really enjoy the characters. I guess I would extend that to the whole Suikoden series as well. And I think I had a great time with the Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy series as well. Other than that, probably my Jade Dragon Crusader Kings 2 campaign. That was a blast. I mean, I've enjoyed most of the Crusader Kings 2 campaigns that I've played, but that one above and beyond all the others. It was just kind of like, you know, epic and exciting, and just the getting as far as I did and getting that achievement and doing it in an unusual way. If you go and look at the wiki for Crusader Kings 2, their recommendation is to play you know, to start as essentially the same character I did, but go Muslim and then go Shia. I mean, go Sunni and then go Shia, because of the ease of conquest that you have with those casus belli. And I think going as a Jewish character just added so much more to it. It added an extra layer of challenge. You know, starting out really far away from where all of your holy sites are and trying to get them so that you don't have awful moral authority the whole time. That was great fun, I think. And to be honest, there's probably a couple other games that I could think of right now. I mean, you know, that I should mention, but I just can't think of them. I guess what I'm saying is I recommend all of my Let's Plays to everyone. No, I shouldn't say that. You know, I am incredibly humble. So, thank you for those questions. We'll get to your other one in another section. Eric Dragonsblade76 asks, since you're a fan of 2nd edition D&D, which is a great edition, by the way, do you plan on playing the Temple of Elemental Evil video game? I understood that being a 3rd edition game. I watched Kikoskia play through it, and it was okay, but it didn't really grab me. I don't have any plans to play any of the 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons computer games. So, unless I'm wrong, and please do correct me if I am, I do not currently have any plans to play that. Kilari Nara asks, what made you want to do the voices for characters? So, when I started out watching Let's Plays, the 2 big influences on me were Kikoskia and her crabbiness, both of whom read the dialogue for the characters. I had never watched any, like, non-narrated Let's Plays, you know, the ones that are just the gameplay, no commentary, and I cannot imagine actually watching one of those. That seems boring. And I don't mean to, you know, offend anyone who does enjoy those. You know, it's all personal preference. When I get commenters who come in and say, you know, like, oh, just shut up and play the game, my response is usually along the lines of, this is how I do it. If you don't like it, go look for another one. You know, they're out there. It's just personal preference. If you don't enjoy the way that I handle Let's Playing, there are other people out there, you know? That's kind of how I viewed it then. You know, I checked out other people, and it was just like, okay, not my thing, move on to someone else. I would never even think about leaving a comment like, you suck, or something like that, because they don't. You know, I mean, it's personal preference, you know? So, my 2 influences, big influences, were people who read the narration, and I don't think it really occurred that much to me to not do so. In addition, a lot of the ways that I watch Let's Plays is I'm doing something else. You know, I'm reading my emails, I'm responding to comments on YouTube, I'm checking the news, reading news articles, checking social media, doing writing for the campaign, you know, the Spelljammer campaign, that sort of thing. So, I'm pretty much always multitasking when I'm watching a Let's Play, and it just, you know, felt natural to create Let's Plays the way that I watch them. So that's why I, you know, voice act the dialogue. And if you're gonna do it, I kind of feel like you might as well try to do some other voices if you can. So that's my thing. I definitely understand people who don't. I was really nervous when I started out doing Let's Plays. You know, am I sounding really stupid doing these voices and giving, you know, making my voice deeper for a character, or, you know, going a little falsetto when I am doing a little kid or something, you know? But, you know, and I was somewhat self-deprecating in some of the earlier videos, and it really actually made me feel good when people would comment and say, no, I think you're wrong. I think you're doing a great job with them. I'm really enjoying them, that kind of thing. So that built up my confidence for sure. And I really do appreciate those comments. So it just kind of naturally evolved from that and the way that I watched and enjoyed Let's Plays. So thank you for that comment. Hope that answered it adequately. Rich, aka Tech, asks, will you play the other Breath of Fire games? I will play 2, 3, and 4. Probably not Dragon Quarter, because I've never actually played it. I might. I'm not ruling it out, but I have no experience with it, and while from how I understand the game plays, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm not sure that it's my kind of thing. I mean, I know a lot of people said that it sucked and or had various really negative things to say about it. I haven't played it, so I can't say that it's bad. But it just doesn't really quite seem like my kind of thing. But I'm not ruling it out. It may come to the channel eventually. But my primary experience with Breath of Fire is through 3 and 4, and I love those two games. They are fantastic. So I will definitely be playing those eventually. Hypernova98 asks, have you ever considered playing the Endless series, Endless Legend, Endless Space? If not, can you explain why? Not really. Mostly just because they have not really been on my radar. I think I watched one of the Endless Space games from Get Daved, and it didn't seem like a bad game, but it just didn't seem like my kind of thing. Maybe if I sat down and played it, I'd enjoy it, but I don't know, it just didn't really grab me. So, again, like most things, I'm not ruling it out, but I don't anticipate playing it, any of them. Nancy asks, and I believe I split up some questions here as well. Why did you decide to start making YouTube videos, and any reason why you decided on games in particular? Kind of covered some of that already. The main two reasons why I started doing it was because it looked like a lot of fun, and I could present games that really weren't out there. And kind of the funny thing is that, like, Kikoski has said that he started his first Let's Play because he went looking for Lands of Lore and couldn't find a complete Let's Play that he enjoyed. Same thing for me with the Gold Box games. I went looking, there was there were a couple Pool of Radiance Let's Plays out there, but I don't think any of them were complete at that time. There certainly were no Buck Rogers complete playthroughs at the time. I don't think that there were any complete Let's Plays of hardly any of the others. Maybe a couple of them. Some of the ones that I did, I was absolutely the first person that I was aware of to do a complete Let's Play of that game. And to this day, I believe I am still the only person to do a complete playthrough of one of the Buck Rogers games in English. At least the DOS version. I can't remember which one it is now, but yeah, so it was very much a way to showcase games that I love to death. Pool of Radiance is one of my all-time favorite games, and most of the rest of them I genuinely enjoy. So it very much was with those early games, the Gold Box games. There weren't any other Let's Plays out there, and it looked like fun to do. And I knew a lot about the games, so I had confidence in what I was playing to do a good showcase of it. So yeah, I mean, that was the early decisions on those games. After that, most of the games I've played have been games that I've played in the past. I'm familiar with, at least to a degree. Some of them have been games that I never completed, and it was like, this forces me to complete the game. So like I just recently had Breath of Fire on the channel. I've never played through that game in its entirety before. I played a little bit at other people's houses on the SNES. I bought and played a little bit of the Game Boy Advance version, but I never completed it. So it's like, doing a Let's Play means that I complete it, I experience the end of it, and that, so that works out well for me. Eventually, I will be getting to Final Fantasy VII, for example, which I have never completed. So it's one of the few Final Fantasy games up through, not including the latest, few and not including the MMOs and stuff like that I had never completed. So it's an opportunity to do so, even though I don't like the game. So that's that's been a driving force for a lot of the games that I play. It allows me to experience personally the completion of the game, say that I've completed it, showcase it for you guys, have fun with it, that sort of thing. So that really is driving a lot of what I do with the Let's Plays. Second question from Nancy. Are you playing anything outside of the games you record for the channel? Not really, and this is a pretty common element from my discussions with other Let's Players and stuff like that. If you play a game that you're not recording, you feel like you're kind of wasting your time, wasting opportunity. Perhaps that might be a better explanation. It's like, if I play a game, I may as well record it, kind of thing. So basically, it's only like Stellaris and Crusader Kings 2 at this point that I play and don't record. Personal campaigns, experimental campaigns, that sort of thing, to learn new mechanics and elements of the games better. So, in terms of going back and playing through other games or Japanese RPGs or even new games, like if I get a new game, I may as well record it for the channel, kind of thing. So, I really don't play much other than what goes up on the channel. And I don't have a whole lot of time to do so anyway. I mean, I record a lot for the channel, so I don't have a whole lot of time with other interests of mine to, do a full playthrough of another game. So, it very much is, what you see on the channel is what I'm playing. So, let's see. And the final question in this section is from Ashley. I think we all need to know the backstory of the ham jokes. I kept this in this section because it is, relevant to the channel. I honestly am not entirely sure on the origin. It sort of started with Ultima 7. I'm pretty sure well before Ultima 7 I have commented on my love of ham. I do love ham. It is my favorite food of all time. It is the best food of all time. And anyone who says otherwise is wrong. Joking, of course. But in Ultima 7, I think I made a point of not feeding the ham to anyone other than the Avatar, because the ham is important. The ham is good. Only the Avatar gets the ham. And, of course, feeding the awful stuff like leeks to Iolo, because, it's Iolo. I think it, other than these occasional jokes, I think it really took off when I was doing one of the Stellaris campaigns and joking about, spreading the knowledge of ham to everyone or something like that. And it kind of went nuts on Discord and stuff like that. So that's really where it is. I'm honestly not entirely sure how it took off. I know Discord had a lot to do with it. But other than that, I think it's just, my constant commenting on ham that did it. And it's kind of, how a lot of a lot of memes take off regardless of the medium. It's, a few comments here and there and then getting picked up by other people and just, gains critical mass. So, other than that, eat ham. It's good for you. Don't ask your doctor about that. They'll probably tell you something other than that, and they're wrong. Anyway, that is it for the first section. Next section is personal interests, gaming, that sort of thing, outside of Let's Plays, both, tabletop and video games, and just, questions about games not specific to playing them for the channel and stuff like that. Nikhil Sindagi asks, any new games or series that you've been working on? Not really. It's kind of related to the other question about playing outside of Let's Plays. Like I said, other than personal campaigns and Crusader Kings 2 and Stellaris, I used to play quite a bit of Minecraft on my own, but I haven't launched that in a really long time, and I kind of feel like I should, but it's also an incredible time sink, so I don't really have that much time for that sort of thing. In terms of things that I'm looking forward to, um, there's a game coming out next year called In the Valley of Gods from the makers of Firewatch that I'm really looking forward to. It takes place in like the 1930s Egypt archaeological investigation kind of thing, and it looks gorgeous. And it's like I got back from my Egypt trip and discovered that game was coming out, and it's like, oh, perfect segue kind of thing. It doesn't have a firm release date yet, but next year. That's what I'm really looking forward to right now. Let's see. Ben Clarks has a few questions that I moved from other sections. He asks, how many historical events do you think really shaped our world, like the fall of Constantinople in 1453, Roman Empire, etc.? Everything. I genuinely don't think that there were very many inconsequential events, like truly inconsequential events in history. If they are, you probably don't know about them. Like, what did random guy in Sumer eat for breakfast on the 32nd day of summer? All right, genuinely inconsequential. But the arc of history is that every event feeds into other events. If things in China had been different, the course of the steppe nomads, their history would have changed. They may not have attacked China if China had not been incredibly prosperous, which admittedly is primarily based on the land and stuff like that. But, there's also elements to who takes power when, what kind of reforms they do, whether or not they're, terrible authoritarians and create, rebellions in their realms, things like that. So, honestly, like, being a fan of history, I don't think that there's many major events that you could say are not consequential. Even, you look at words in our language, common words, and they can have, origins going back to completely unrelated cultures. The word abyss, it's maybe not a super common word in the English language, but pretty much everyone would recognize it who is fluent in English. For a deep chasm or a deep oceanic trench, or from gaming, the abyss of the outer planes, stuff like that. But that word ultimately appears to be from Sumerian. A word in modern English coming ultimately from a civilization that functionally died out 4,000 years ago, that didn't directly feed into English culture. That's pretty amazing. I mean, admittedly, it comes through Greek and stuff like that, but still, and then, of course, the Greek epics were inspired by the Sumerian and Akkadian epics. I really, don't think that there's too many things that are not important when you really get down to it and think about how things would be different, if things were changed. And that's one of the reasons why I have a hard time getting into a lot of alternate history fiction, because I tend to start thinking about it and like get into a mode of, there's no way that this would happen. You know, you can't get this alternate history scenario that they're presenting based on the history that they've created. You know, they've tried to make just one change, but so many other things would then change too, and you can't really consider how everything would change. You know, if a devastating plague had wiped out Sumer, history would be completely different today. Like, almost every aspect, you know. And you know, being a speaker of English, English itself, modern English, is so heavily influenced by multiple languages that if one thing had been, you know, one significant thing had been different in one of those constituent cultures, English would be completely different, and the course of English history and thus American history and thus modern world history would be completely different. You know, if the Norsemen had just, you know, stayed at home and not gone out raiding, everything in history, you know, modern history, would be different. Not everything, but you know, you get what I'm getting at. You know, huge consequential shifts in modern history if the Norsemen had not gone raiding. You know, it's just the little things, like, you know, day-to-day things that don't have such overarching consequences. But even then, you know, if a major historical person had not eaten breakfast every day, you know, and maybe they didn't have the thoughts that they did, or, you know, yeah, things would have changed. You know, I don't know. It's just it's really hard for me to say that nothing, you know, anything, any one thing in history is essentially inconsequential. So I do enjoy thinking about things like that, though. I like those what if scenarios and stuff. But I definitely do get into a mode of, these things wouldn't work because all these other moving parts that are, you know, the author has decided to leave the same would have changed. But yeah, I mean, that's probably a good analogy. You know, in history, there are so many moving parts that you can't really take into consideration all of them. Anyway, thank you for that question. I really enjoyed that one. And he also asks, how many hours have I spent in Crusader Kings 2? As it stands right now, 2,441. So, pretty quick question there. Jason Silverberg asks, have you played Shin Megami Tensei series before? I have not. And maybe this could have been in the other section, because to a certain extent, you know, people have been asking for me to play various games in the series or related franchise for quite a while. So they may show up on the channel at some point. But yeah, no, it's just one of those series that completely passed me by. I really did not. I don't know that I really realized it existed beyond just hearing the name and just never getting around to looking into it. So there's a lot of games and game series like that just completely passed me by, and I missed them. Which, again, you know, going back to why I do Let's Playing, it gives me an opportunity to delve into things that I had not experienced before. So that's one of the things that I enjoy about Let's Playing. Next question from Luca Truba. Do you have any experience with the Alternity RPG? If yes, what are your thoughts on it? And do you think elements of it would have a place in an eventual Spelljammer adaptation for 5th edition or beyond? My only real experience with Alternity is from articles in Dragon Magazine and Adventures in Dungeon Magazine, which, you know, I casually read as, you know, all right, I finished everything else in this magazine. Let's read this thing that I'm not very familiar with. I've never played Alternity. I don't know how the system works. There was kind of a quick play or quick start guide in one of the Dragon magazines, I think. And I do remember looking over it if I'm remembering correctly that it existed, but never played it, and I don't really recall what my thoughts on it were. I can't even recall if it was uh, second edition-esque or if it was something completely different. Like, if you look at the Buck Rogers RPG, that's AD&D. I mean, it literally is AD&D with some different bells and whistles. I don't recall what I thought of the the alternative quick start rules and stuff like that. But I've never actually played it. It's pure science fiction, futurist science fiction, with Earth and stuff like that. The adventures, I've looked at the adventures to, kind of a, I want, I mean, it's space-based. Maybe I can just, file off the scientific elements and replace them with magic and turn it into an adventure. And some of them utilize elements that, like, unethical corporate scientific research, which, I mean, yeah, you could turn that into an evil necromancer experimenting on monsters or something like that, but that corporate element really doesn't show up in fantasy very much, because, I mean, corporations are a relatively modern thing. So I've never really looked into, beyond, it's been more of a quick thing of, can I quickly file off the edges and turn this into a Spelljammer adventure? Not really, so move on, kind of thing. So I don't really know what elements could or should or might show up in a 5th edition Spelljammer adaptation. I'll be honest, if 5th edition publishes Spelljammer, a Spelljammer sourcebook or something like that, number one, I'll be incredibly surprised. Number two, I will expect them to change a heck of a lot about the game, to my disappointment and I think to the setting's detriment. There are definitely some elements that could be tweaked or refined in 2nd edition Spelljammer, just like 2nd edition itself. I don't think it's a perfect game, but when I look at conversations online by people who generally don't play Spelljammer and generally don't have an interest in Spelljammer about the things that they want to see changed in Spelljammer, it tends to be stuff like, that falls along the lines of, you don't really understand Spelljammer, sir. It's like, I can't believe, air envelopes. The ships should be enclosed. And it's like, just go play a science fiction space game then. I mean, that's just science fiction. One of the overarching themes of Spelljammer is, and it says it in the book, is everything you know about space is wrong. If you go into Spelljammer with preconceived notions on how space travel and space flight operate, you're wrong. Because the goal was to be completely different. It's fantasy. They have the luxury of changing everything. And to a certain extent, I find it weird that people who have no problem suspending their disbelief for giant ants, which physically cannot exist in the real world. They can't breathe. A giant insect cannot breathe in today's atmosphere. They have no problem suspending their disbelief for 200-foot-long flying reptiles that breathe fire. But, a ship traveling through space because everything has its own, one gravity unit gravity? No, that's too far. I'm like, really? But anyway, so I fully expect significant elements to change if 5th edition publishes Spelljammer, and I will be incredibly shocked and surprised and pleased if they keep the basic mechanics intact. I don't think they will. That's all assuming that they actually publish Spelljammer. I kind of suspect that it's going to be a little bit more nod and wink type situation. I understand that the upcoming book, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, is going to include the GIF. I know that I believe they've talked about some the Neogi were in the Volo's Guide to Monsters. I think something. One of the Spelljammer races was in there, or maybe I'm thinking of Lithids, and there's mention of them coming from space. But it's like, oh, they come from space. Leave that element undetailed rather than say they come in ships powered by magic helms that are not enclosed because they have air envelopes and everything's enclosed in a crystal sphere, because that allows you to nod to the Spelljammer folks and nod to the people who don't like Spelljammer but still have the belief that the campaign worlds exist within three-dimensional space, galaxies, star systems, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I expect. But again, going back to Alternity, I really don't know enough about it to say what might or might not show up in a revived Spelljammer, or what should or should not. So, other than technology, the technology should not show up. Next question. Mad Martin 815 asks, do you have any particularly fond memories regarding playing a specific game? For example, for me, it's playing Final Fantasy 3-6 with my grandpa long ago on the SNES, then also playing Chrono Trigger with him. When I was pretty young, I don't remember the year. I was probably 9, 10, something like that, 11, maybe around there. My father and I played Captain Comic, a one-person developed side-scrolling platformer that really doesn't have the tightest controls. But it was a fun game. It was a silly little game. Shareware, you send them money and you get the full version kind of thing. Didn't play the full version, just played the shareware game. But I played it with my father, and, it's a single-player side-scrolling platformer, and you're like, how do you play that with someone else? One of us controlled the movements, and the other controlled the, firing the weapon. And it was great fun, and we got farther than I could get on my own together. So, that was a fun father-son thing. Other than that, didn't really play a whole lot of games with my parents. My mother, not interested in video gaming at all. Didn't care if I was, but not herself interested. Although my father and I did play SimCity a lot, the original. Other than that, I had a really good neighbor friend that we played a bunch of games together. And to a certain extent, Let's Playing is kind of a natural offshoot of that. Or maybe not Let's Playing itself, but the experience of watching someone else play a game. Because we played a lot of single-player games, the Ultima games and Warcraft, maybe Warcraft 2, although I think I may have had my own computer by the time that came out. And then, of course, console games where, one person is playing and the other person is watching and joking and stuff like that. We played, but together we played, actually together, of course, Mario Kart and, stuff like that. The things that I remember the most about that would probably be the time that we played during the summer, Secret of Mana, and at the time, my SNES console was sitting on a carpet, which is not a good place to put your SNES when you decide to play for over 15 hours or something like that. The console overheated and glitched out and wiped all the saves on our game, Secret of Mana. That was something that shocked us. We laughed about it. I mean, Secret of Mana is not exactly a difficult game, and we were able to get pretty far in it. That same not session, but playing the game in with the console on the carpet there on that same TV and everything like that. I had borrowed a turbo controller for the SNES from someone, and we got to the boss fight with the 3 Tonpoles, I believe it is, right before you get the Undyne magic. And going into that battle, the sprite and the girl died off really quick. The boy was down to 2 hit points and using the spear, and it's like, I'm dead anyway, turbo on attack. And if you're familiar with Secret of Mana, you know that you do a lot more damage if you attack and wait for it, the percentage bar to get to 100%. If you just spam the attack button, you do like 1-2 points of damage. I turned on turbo, and the boy just started whacking the last enemy with the spear just constantly for a couple hit points, and it stun locked it. All it could do was heal occasionally until it ran out of MP, and then it could do nothing. And I killed it that way and won the boss fight with the turbo controller, just whacking it for 1-2 points of damage each hit. It was hilarious. We could not believe that worked. Also played Final Fantasy VI, where in Final Fantasy VI you can change the control configuration, so a player 2 can control 2 of the players in battle. So we did that a lot, and I discovered that if you're player 2, you can screw up player 1 playing Sabin. If you're holding down the attack button, it will screw up their attempts to use Sabin's key combo special moves. That was kind of funny. And I will admit that when I first started doing it, it was just, oh, battle, easy battle, just hold down the button. And he's like, I'm going to use a, combo attack. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm just holding down the button. I'm just playing people just attack. And he's like, why is this not working every single time? Until I realized, huh. And then one time, next time I don't hold down the button. And then it works. He gets his attack off. And then I try it again, hold down the button. I'm like, oh. So I troll him a few times. I don't know if he ever realized that happened. I don't think I told him, but yeah, that was pretty amazing to discover that. Thank you for that question. Here we get a couple overlapping questions. D. Cruz and Alex Tamames asks, first game or system, basically, was your first video game you ever played? I don't remember exactly what the first video game I ever played is, but the first one that I remember was on also my first system. That system was the TI-99-4A home computer, which the ads all had Bill Cosby in them. It was, talking about how inexpensive this was, perfect for home use, and I'm pretty sure it cost like $1,000 in the early 80s. It's a lot of money. It hooked up to your TV as opposed to having its own monitor. It had memory cartridges, but you could also do spreadsheeting and stuff like that. You could get printer attachments and stuff like that. But it also had games, like cartridge games. I had a racing game, but the game that I remember, and I don't know if it was the first, but it's the most memorable, Hunt the Wumpus, which I actually did a video of. I did a video of a number of TI-99-4A games as, I think, my 500 subscriber special. So, you guys can go look through for that. They're really, really simplistic games. But, man, when you're like 4 years old or 5 years old, those are fun as heck. I had a lot of fun with that. I enjoyed that quite a bit. That was my first game system. Computer system or console, and the first game that I played. I've never actually played an Atari 2600. Never had one. Can't recall anyone who had one, at least not hooked up when I went over to their house, kind of thing. The NES is the first game console that I remember playing at other people's houses, and eventually getting myself, of course. Another overlap from Super Wattman and D. Cruz is, what is your all-time favorite game of all time? And that is undeniably Xenogears. That game is, in my opinion, still unrivaled in its complexity and interesting story. It is just an amazing, amazing game, in my opinion. The only thing that would make it better is a HD remaster where all the gameplay is the same. Of course, bugs are fixed. So, the gameplay itself does not change, but it's just updated to modern graphics kind of thing. And I'd be fine with keeping the sprites for the characters. Having the mixture of sprite and 3D was pretty amazing. And also, as a sprite character, you can rotate around, but you can also jump on other people and their sprites. That blew me away at the time. That was amazing. But the artwork and the graphics and the music, and the story, literally everything about that game is done right, with the exception of the second disc, which, was time crunch, budget crunch kind of thing. So, everything else about the game is just utterly fantastic, I think. And of course I have a Let's Play of it. Do check that out if you haven't. And second question from Super Wattman: what is your favorite game this year so far? This year, I don't have one. I haven't really played anything new except for Surviving Mars, really. So let's extend that back to 2017. Just say 2017, 2018. That is definitely Expeditions Viking. That game is fantastic. I enjoyed that so much. The story is great. The visuals are amazing. Pardon me. The visuals are just completely amazing. And the music works really well for it. It fits, and it's gorgeous. I highly recommend that game. Definitely check that out if you have not played it yourself. And there's a lot of different stuff that you can do. People are still asking me to do an evil playthrough, and it may come. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it won't or anything like that. It's just I got a lot of games to play and stuff like that, so hard to fit them all in. And Alex Tamames has another question. Do you like RTS and SimCity games? If so, what is your favorite? Yes and no. I'm not a big RTS person, but I do find some of them fun. Obviously, War in Middle-earth, one of the earliest real-time strategy games, is an early love of mine. But in terms of more recent stuff, I, of course, did Warcraft and Warcraft 2 and enjoyed those a lot. I was not really a fan of Command and Conquer, though. Those didn't really do it for me. My jam was Total Annihilation. That I played a ton. And probably should have mentioned this in the earlier question about, particularly fond memories of playing specific games. Total Annihilation, they actually had early DLC. You could download new units from their website and put that into the game, and that was free. And I remember that was just blew me away that you could do this in the game. That they'd put up new units and you could download them and play them and stuff like that. But then they did an expansion pack, and it included all of those units, new stuff, new scenarios, new adventures. What was it called? Krogoth? Something about Krogoth, I think. That was a new unit. That was a super powerful unit in the game. And the same friend that I played all those SNES games with, he and I downloaded the expansion early. We bought it. I mean, we intended to buy it, and we did buy it. But it was like 3 days before release. Someone leaked the expansion, and you had to download it. They basically zipped it up, split it across floppy disks. This is a CD based game, and posted it online. It took me all day like 24 hours to download that. And I got it all, and you know, unzipped it all, and we played the expansion like 2 or 3 days early, and still bought it, of course. And that was just like amazing to us. That you know, it's like, oh, we're playing this before almost anyone else, kind of thing. And that was tons of fun. And you know, I mean that kind of shapes my view as well. Like, you know, today I don't really see a problem with downloading a game if you absolutely positively intend to purchase it, kind of thing. So, you know, it was just a couple days early, and you know, we were just super excited about it, and someone leaked it, and we bought it. So, you know, and we had always intended to buy it. You know, we would not have not bought it after that. If we had, we would have uninstalled it. So, let's see. So with regards to SimCity games, of course, SimCity was, you know, early time sink for me. You know, I mean, one of those early games that I put in many, 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 many hours. One of my favorite cities in the original. I built it up, filled up the entire map with city, and I was like, all right, what do I do now? Ah, I know, disaster, 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 and then I rebuilt on the ashes. That was fun. I had a lot of fun with that. I played a little bit of SimCity 2000, but I never actually owned it. And it wasn't until SimCity 4 that I, again, played a lot of SimCity, or that kind of game. And Surviving Mars is basically a SimCity game, a city builder that I've played a lot of, you know, now on the channel. I've definitely enjoyed that. I didn't really get into City Skylines, and I think part of it was because it's really just SimCity 4, it felt like, with a few little bells and whistles. But the big thing that I think I got tired of with SimCity 4 was that you couldn't do actual city management. Like genuine city management, traffic light timing to perfection, tweaking things to, you know, I mean, like if you actually design, you know, work on city planning today in the real world, there are tons and tons of things that you have to take into account, that you have to pay attention to, that are not in city builder games. And I wish they were, because I want to do those kinds of things. So that kind of, you know, I played a bit of City Skylines, and it was just a case of I wanted more. I wanted more of the city management stuff that you just don't get. So I think that if another city builder that's not completely unique, like, I mean, Surviving Mars is completely unique in that, you know, there's no traffic management to deal with. You're not dealing with a lot of these real world things. It's just fantasy and stuff like that. I suppose if there were a city builder that was medieval fantasy based, maybe I'd be interested in that too. But a modern city builder game, I definitely want you know, realistic traffic management and city management functionality that you just really don't get in the games. In part because they're very complex and they're very hard to model. And the other thing is that I want realistic taxation. And realistic, you know, money coming in from a higher, you know, governmental authority. SimCity and City Skylines, you're basically building a city-state that's completely independent. It's not part of a country. You're not getting, you know, federal or state taxes spent in your city or anything like that. You're not having to deal with state or county or federal regulations. And it's like, I want that. I want those things. So, you know, that's kind of my limiter on modern city builder games. If someone produces a game that has some of those features, maybe I'll be more interested. But for now, I just have not been able to get into City Skylines. Let's see. Next question from Zappaslave. What is your full viewing experience with the Gundam franchise? So obviously I've watched Mobile Suit Gundam, Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, 0080, 0083, Char's Counterattack, F91, Victory Gundam for the 8th MS team, Unicorn, working on the Origin now, waiting for the next volume to come out. What other Universal Century stuff is there? I'm probably blanking on something. I have not watched Igloo. The 3D graphics turned me off. I have not yet watched Thunderbolt. The mecha kind of turned me off to that, but I'll get it eventually. I'll get to it eventually. That's for the Universal Century stuff. That's my favorite. That's what I enjoy the most. The alternate universe stuff, it can be fun, but I really have not been interested in the most recent stuff. I have, of course, watched, G Gundam, Gundam Wing, After Century Gundam X, Turn A Gundam. Turn A Gundam is fantastic. Highly recommend it. I've watched Gundam Seed. I've watched Gundam 00. I have not watched Age. Iron-Blooded Orphans. I have absolutely no interest in Gundam Build Fighters. What else? I'm probably blanking on a few things. There's definitely something niggling at the back of my head that I know I should mention, but I can't recall. That's primarily it. I've read what UC Gundam has come out here, which never gets completed, manga-wise, I mean. Like, there was... shoot. There was a 3-volume manga series that only 2 volumes came out. École du Ciel, which is amazing and fantastic, and they didn't finish. I swear, this is one of my pet peeves. And one of the reasons why I don't read manga, because if I start something, the publishing company is not going to finish it. It's like guaranteed. Yeah, anyway. I don't read a whole lot of manga, but I'm a UC fanboy, so UC stuff I'm interested in. Still waiting on my Garibaldi Beta Master Grade, which probably never going to come, but I keep hoping. I got my Marasai at least. But yeah, so that's my essentially my full viewing experience with the Gundam franchise. Game-wise, really just the, Federation versus Zeon, AUG versus Titans, and Gundam versus Zeta Gundam. I did get the first Seed game of that style, but I couldn't stand it. Like, the controls were completely different. It was not the same thing of, doing the campaign where you're fighting a lot of grunts. It was basically, what it evolved, it was the first of what it has evolved into of iconic suits versus iconic suits across all franchises. And screw that crap. If I want to do that, there's Gundam Battle Assault, which I have Gundam Battle Assault 2. I suck at these days. I used to be really good, but I suck at it now last time I tried it. And I don't want that. I want to fight the grunts. I want to play as the grunts and fight against the big things. I want that campaign style. And you don't get that with the latest Versus games. So I have no interest in them. They may play wonderfully. They may be awesome with the suits, but I'm just not interested without that. Including grunts and iconic machines. So, I will probably eventually get to some other Gundam games. I just need to work on it. And right now, I'm a little bit worried about things getting blocked on YouTube. A pretty significant number of the Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam and Federation vs. Zeon videos have been completely blocked worldwide. I still need to figure out a good way to get them up elsewhere. Kind of thinking maybe just put them up on Facebook or something like that. I don't know. And it's one of the reasons why AUG versus Titans has not shown up on the channel, because music, and it's all music issues that blocks them all. And I don't really want to strip out the music because the music is damn good. I also have trouble streaming PlayStation 2 games, so that's out. Maybe if I get a new computer, I'll try again. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for that question. Next up, we've got Why Does He Do That? Asks, well, to me personally, you seem to have so much knowledge on a wealth of things. What exactly have or did or even are you studying? So, I was the kid who read the encyclopedia. That's where I am. I'm the type of person now that people think that that they have their smartphones and they're like, oh, it's so great, I have all these apps, or I get my maps and I get my email and stuff like that. No, the best thing for me about having a smartphone is that when I'm standing in line or elsewhere that I don't really have access to anything else, I can pull up Wikipedia and read. So I am definitely the type of person that just randomly reads Wikipedia articles today. So yeah, it's really that. I mean, I read a lot. I read a lot of information. I like reading science articles, or at least keeping up with the latest science stuff. Which, if you haven't seen it, there's a new video from the surface of a comet. It's only like 1 second long, made up of a time-lapsed over 30 minutes of still images from the surface of a comet. But oh my god, it's amazing. I mean, it's video from the surface of a comet. Who would have thought we would be doing that? I never did. As a kid, with the state of technology in the 80s and what we'd done in the 70s before I was born, I did not think that we would ever be landing on a comet in my lifetime. I mean, absolutely thought that we would eventually, but having a probe land on a comet and getting like high definition images back and stuff like that, oh man, never expected this, and it's amazing. I'm just a big geek, I love knowledge, I love science, I love reading. I had or read a bunch of science books. I was, the kid who loved dinosaurs. And I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, which has some utterly fantastic museums. The Air and Space Museum is amazing. The Natural History Museum is amazing. Just, like, as a kid, went to those museums multiple times a year. I haven't been in a really long time, and I do feel bad about that, but, they're free. It was just, you pay for the metro ride down into the city, go into the museums on a hot summer day. They're air conditioned. When school's out, they're crowded, but just looking at all the stuff and even re-looking at all the stuff, it was an amazing thing for a geeky kid who liked science and dinosaurs and space. That was what I liked as a kid. As I got older, and probably to a certain extent, Civilization helped with that. Playing Civilization and discovering the early texts like writing and playing as the ancient civilizations that you might not have heard of as a kid, until you played Civilization. And just being interested in, like, pulling out the encyclopedia and reading up on them and stuff like that. And as a teenager and things like that. I got interested in ancient history that way. I mean, I was always somewhat interested in it, I like fantasy, so naturally, I like sword and sorcery, swords and armor and knights and castles, and, so you start learning medieval history, and then in school when they talk about Rome and Greece and Egypt and stuff like that, I was always, interested in that stuff. So it really is just, I just, like, have a ravenous need to consume knowledge. And reading Wikipedia and the encyclopedia has just fed that. Today, I do have tons of history books. I've got, books with translations of ancient texts and stuff like that, and it's really interesting to see what was different and really what's the same. I mean, like reading a letter from a Sumerian student to his father in scribe, the student is in scribal school, and basically saying, "Please, Dad, can I come home? They're awful here. They're terrible. I don't like it." And it's like, wow, that's how is that different from stuff you get today, kind of thing? It really isn't. So, that actually reminds me. There was a question during one of my streams about a book that I mentioned. And Lil Bunny was asking if I actually had a 900-page book on Akkadian, I think I may have said Assyrian, literature. And I do. It is called Before the Muses, an Anthology of Akkadian Literature by Benjamin R. Foster. I was slightly wrong. It's actually 1,044 pages. Admittedly, a lot of that is, well, actually, no. The notes in the back are pretty short. Yeah. It's a really, really interesting book. I certainly have not read through the entire thing. I've picked and chosen, things. But it's like split up into sections based on types of writing and period of writing. So, the oldest pieces and the latest pieces and stuff like that. And it's just really interesting stuff. I mean, it covers just about everything from, proverbs and wisdom things, poetry. I'm not sure if there's any economic texts in here. There should be, if there aren't. Yeah, so it's just... It was a really interesting book to get, and it is massive. It really is massive with a ton of translations. It does not have the original text or Romanized Akkadian, which is a little bit disappointing, but you get the translations, which is pretty important. So I can't like read and try to make it sound like what it would have sounded like in Akkadian. Which, for those unaware, Akkadian is the language. Assyrian and Babylonian are the dialects. They're the same language, just dialects. Yeah, I just have, I've got books on the Amarna letters. I've got books on the Hittites, ancient Egypt. I got a bunch of the ancient history Osprey books. Fantastic art. I just like, I love learning. I hate school, but I love learning. And it's just, the sciences and history has just always been my jam, so to speak. Except more recent history. When gunpowder starts coming into wars, I kind of lose an interest. Not as much as I used to. I'm more interested in it these days from a cultural point of view, but I really do enjoy the ancient history more so. So that's I haven't really formally studied much of this. I certainly took classes in school, high school, college, but I don't have a degree in this. I'm not. I'm not a professor. I don't have a PhD or anything in any of this. It's just, I'm an amateur at all of this, but I love it, and I can't get enough of it. I just enjoy being it, immersing myself in it and stuff like that. So that's really where that all comes from, and yeah, it's not a whole lot of formal study. So there are probably a lot of things that I think I'm right on that I'm actually wrong on based on, poor conclusions that I've drawn from the stuff I've read. And I would probably say that I definitely have not had the, made the best choices on all the materials, not knowing people in the fields and stuff like that. I've probably purchased books that looked good, but turns out aren't. Sometimes I can recognize them, and sometimes I can't. But yeah, so that's really where it all comes from. I hope that answered your question. Next up, we've got another question from Nancy. What's your story with Lego? It eventually becomes apparent to anyone who watches your videos that you love Lego. You build them, you collect them, you know its history. How far back do you go with Lego? Got any childhood memories, stories, or thoughts to share? So my story with Lego is, again, it's almost as old as my memories itself. Lego is one of the earliest toys that I had. Not even Duplo, just Lego itself. And in my opinion, Lego is the best toy ever made, and probably the best toy that will ever be made. And on top of that, it's also the type of toy that you don't need to grow out of. It is just as enjoyable and interesting to build something today as an adult, well past childhood, as it was when I was a kid. With the added benefit of having a better brain for figuring things out, you know, having a better visual sense, better skill, you know, more easily able to turn, you know, like turn a picture into a representative model. I had a conversation with a coworker a number of years ago. He did not grow up with Lego himself, but he had a son, 7 years old, who was into Lego. But my coworker, you know, encouraged his son to build the set, and when done, take it apart, put it back into the box, and put the box away, keeping them all separate and stuff like that. And he told me a story about how his son brought a pile of pieces put together and said, "Dad, look at my robot." And he's like, "That's not a robot." And I had a conversation with him, and I'm like, no, man, that's a robot, because he says it is. You need to understand that with the kid. You know, their imagination is going places that yours isn't as an adult. If they see it as a robot, it's a robot, and you should go with that. And encourage that. Encourage them to engage their imagination. And if they want pieces from set 1 and pieces from set 2 and pieces from set 3 to make their stack of pieces that to you doesn't look like a robot, but they say it is, then encourage that. You know, mix the pieces together. If you want to help them, you know, learn some, you know, organization skills and stuff like that, yeah, go for sorting the pieces by color or part or something like that. Whatever, you know, whatever works for you and your son, but encourage them to explore their imagination. And like 6 months later, he came to me and said, "That was fantastic advice. I could not believe how wrong I was before." You know, he is definitely more engaged with the toy now. You know, now that I've encouraged that kind of thinking with him, and yeah, I mean, that made me feel really good to, you know, not, number one, help him understand what it is about the toy that's great, and help him encourage his son to be really creative and stuff like that. And that's what is great about Lego for me. I haven't been building much lately. Again, it's like time issues, and to be honest, there is a critical mass point that I hit with my collection where sorting it and organizing it took so much time and effort that I stopped doing it, and now it has grown well beyond that, and it is terrible. So that constrains my ability to build, and, you know, above and beyond the time element of it. So there's a lot that I would like to do with Lego that I just don't have the time or patience for right now. Hopefully, eventually, I will be able to get back into it, but I don't know. If I could just not sleep, you know, things would be so much better. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember how, you know, I don't remember what my first set was. I don't remember how old I was, but I couldn't have been more than like 4 or 5. And I was getting, my parents were getting me sets that were, according to the box, too old for me. I remember one of my earliest experiences was with shoot, what is that set number? It was a construction site, Lego Town set. Now I'm going to look it up. I don't even remember what the good sites are for Lego anymore. Oh, I know which would have it. I believe I got it for a Christmas. And that set is just stuck in my mind as one of my favorite sets, most enjoyable sets. What is it? Is it that? No, it's not that. Do, do, do. But yeah, so I mean, it was in my opinion, my favorite toy as a kid, the best toy. I I played it to death all the time. Lego was my life to a to a certain extent. Um, what is that? Jeez, what is that set? I think I just need to get to the Legoland Town sets. I'll figure it out. But I know that, I mean, like, the set wasn't around for all that long. Although they had like 3-year periods for sets at the time. Um, so I know that I could not have been like 8 when I got it, because there's no way it was still in the store when I was 8. And I remember other sets from the time period. Um, but I also had like the idea books and everything like that. It was just, like the toy that defined my life more than any other toy. Um, and I still enjoy it. I still think it is one of the most interesting uh, mediums for construction, for experimentation, for imagination. Um, Being able to turn something that you picture into an actual model, and getting contours out of little tiny rectangular pieces of plastic that have studs on the top. uh that's pretty tremendous. I mean, definitely the things that I'm most pleased with are some of the big things that I built. I built some Gundam ships, many years ago. It's probably over 10 years ago is when I built those. And those are really like my last big Lego construction, other than sets that I have purchased and built and then taken apart again, and planned to sort and never really got around to it. Um, but yeah, so I mean, like, I still remember, and I could probably in some cases build some of those old sets from memory. Um, and I definitely remember the sets that I never got that I always wanted. Uh, it's just, one of those things that really, really defined my life. Ah, there we go. 6383 Public Works Center. That's the set that I was thinking of. That's one of the, that was a defining Lego set. You can just go on to brickset.com and put in 6383 if you want to see what that set is. So, yeah, I mean, it just, stuff like that just, it defined my, my early childhood. I don't really know what else to say about it. Just always been one of my lifelong loves, I guess. And it does disappoint me that I haven't been able to do a whole lot with it lately, but, I mean, gotta make sacrifices over time. Let's see. Next question. Again from Ashley. We've got, I'm genuinely curious as to why you prefer the second edition over the others. So, to be fair, one of my reasons for preferring second edition is that it's the version that I know. It's the version that I grew up playing. It's the version that works best for me. I find it more enjoyable to play than even non-Dungeons and Dragons games. You know, I prefer the, just from a system perspective, I enjoy it more than Shadowrun, which, again, I only played Shadowrun back then, not recently. I enjoy it more than other things that I've seen since then. It just clicks with me. But compared to other Dungeons and Dragons systems, I feel like it kept the spirit of the earlier games while refining the rules, streamlining certain things, eliminating things that were clunky. Certainly not everything. There are definitely things that I would change. If I had my druthers, I would probably bring in the Buck Rogers skill system into the game rather than use the proficiency system. But the proficiency system does work. It's not bad. It's just not quite as good. So, I mean, it's not to say that everything about the system is perfect, but looking at the changes made in later editions, I feel that they moved away from trying to reasonably simulate realistic conditions in the game. While, you gotta have rules, it is a game, it's gotta be fun, stuff like that. So it makes reasonable trade-offs between, gaming and simulation. But later editions, I find, disregard the need to simulate a realistic environment. If you're playing a role-playing game, you're taking on a role of someone who believes they exist within a real world that admittedly operates differently from our world, yes, but things need to be explained or be explainable within the game world in a way that would make sense to someone who has no concept that they're in a game. It has to be, explainable to another person. If you can explain what's going on in the game, stripping out the rules to someone who has not played the game, and you can do so, and they're not like, well, why does that happen? Well, it just does because of the game rule. I mean, if you're getting to that, if you're saying constantly, well, this happens because the rules say it happens, then you've broken the simulation aspect of role-playing. And that's crucial in role-playing, because if you're not doing that in a role-playing game, in my opinion, you're playing a game, not a role-playing game. There's a continuum between what basically is acting, acting on a stage or acting in a movie, all the way through to playing a card game or a board game, Monopoly or something like that, where you're not actually trying to simulate something, you're just playing a game based entirely on rules, or playing poker or something like that, that's not in any way simulating anything. Whereas acting is intending to completely simulate, give the complete illusion of an alternate reality kind of thing. And role-playing games are a trade-off between the need for game rules, the need for having challenge and stuff like that. I mean, with a play or a film or TV or something like that, everything is scripted out. There is no game involved. You're just acting. You're role-playing, really. You're taking on a role and acting it out. But everything is scripted out. There's no challenge. There's no game to it. Role-playing is, has added in those elements of gaming, so that there's challenge, there's a goal that you do not know what it is or how it will play out yet. And that's why a dungeon master is also a referee. You know, the game master is a referee or a judge, and they should be, you know, a good game master is going to understand that that's what they are. They are making judgment calls based on what's happening. They are adjudicating, as a judge would, rules, issues, and situations for their players, who are the drivers of the story, the adventure, and stuff like that. And a good game master is going to understand that element of the role-playing game. For me, second edition, of all of the Dungeons and Dragons varieties, gets to the sweet spot of being streamlined enough, having, you know, earlier D&D versions have some clunkiness to them. You know, ideas that, you know, they needed to put an idea in there, but they hadn't played with it enough to figure out if it worked or if it needed to be changed. Then you get to first edition AD&D, and you get even more of that. Second edition AD&D has even more of that. Still needs some, because it's a constant thing, you know. You always need to experiment, and you always need to refine. But the problem is that third edition, in my opinion, shifted. It was no longer about continuing to refine. The goals of the game changed, and it was more about being a game. It was more about ensuring that what the players want goes. And it took a lot of inspiration from video games where, you know, which are, you know, computer role-playing games, console role-playing games, are far less about role-playing than they are about gaming. Even the best of them, compared to a tabletop sit-down role-playing game. And I really feel like that third edition, and most especially fourth edition, move away from that. I do feel that fifth edition brings it back towards the role-playing, away from the gaming, but not enough. It was definitely a whoa, we've gone too far kind of thing. But I still don't think that they've done enough. One example that I give is that in second edition and first edition, you had combat rounds which were 1 minute. It's an arbitrary number. It's essentially meaningless. It's there for timekeeping purposes. If a battle has lasted 4 rounds, it's lasted 4 minutes, so you know that if something like a spell duration or a villain who is outside of the battle doing something else is on a timetable, you know how long has passed, so you can properly gauge, you know, how things are happening, when things are happening, and stuff like that. But ultimately, that 1 minute is arbitrary. There were arguments that 1 minute was too long. You know, oh, I swing my sword 1 time in 1 minute? That makes no sense. So then the game designers point out that, well, hold on. There is probably a lot of stuff, like if you were to film what was really going on, you could go to the world that is being simulated by the game. You're seeing parries and blocks and thrusts and feints and stuff like that. And ultimately, the damage inflicted is not necessarily just you've sliced into them, but they're getting tired and drained and stuff like that. There's a lot going on, and you need to, you know, being a game, you need to have some rules on when you win a combat. And it's somewhat arbitrary on how they did it. And most of it is just decisions based on ease of play, speed of play, you know, simple to understand, things like that. But then you get to third edition, and suddenly the round is 6 seconds. Because they've gone with the one attack is 1 sword swing kind of thing. But that introduces other problems. Because then you get to later editions, like in particular 5th edition. This is one of my big beefs. They have added in a whole variety of things that are just there to make characters more powerful over time. You know, it's like you've advanced in level, so now you get these new abilities. But they've separated out from the idea of the simulation aspect. So you know, it's like you're a more powerful character, so you can attack more often. I was watching one 5th edition game, and someone with a hand crossbow, which is a real weapon, but not a medieval weapon, and not a particularly common weapon. Pardon me. And he attacked 5 times. Not only did he attack 5 times, but he was specifically using a special ability called aimed shot, which made it harder for him to hit, but increased the damage. So the idea is that he is taking careful aim with what amounts to a pistol-sized crossbow and aiming at a specific target, firing, drawing the string back, pulling a bolt out of his quiver, placing it on the crossbow, aiming again, firing, all of this in 6 seconds. It's a stretch at 1 minute for that thing without magic. And there was no magic involved here. He was not under a haste spell because, I mean, you know, if magic is speeding up time and reactions and everything like that, rules are out, you know, real world rules are out the window. Physics is out the window. And that's perfectly fine. He was not doing that. He was literally taking careful aim with a hand crossbow, firing, drawing back the bowstring, pulling another bolt out of his quiver, placing it on the crossbow, which you have to shift where you're holding the weapon in such a position. And then re-aiming, which means resteadying and everything like that. You can't do that. I mean, if you go watch the Olympics and see the people with the, you know, what is basically like a pellet gun in like the Nordic Combined or the archery competitions. They're doing what would count as an aimed shot. They're trying to hit a specific target. You know, because basically, you know, the idea in the 5th edition game is that the aimed shot is, you know, you're specifically aiming at a vital spot. You know, some place it's going to hurt more, do more damage, you know, inflict greater pain, more stopping power, rather than just a flesh wound that, you know, a scrape on the arm kind of thing. So it really separated, you know, it completely separated the idea that the role-playing game is supposed to simulate reality. And, I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of fudging, you know. If it's a question of, you know, you do a lot of studies and you find that people can fire on average 2.5 arrows. You know, they can shoot 2.5 arrows with a longbow in one round, getting reasonable aim. You know, ensuring that they're hitting vital, you know, a vital enough spot, center of mass on a target, that kind of thing. 2.5. So do you make it 2 or do you make it 3? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You know, and that's fine. You know, and you could say that. You start out at 2, you can later get to 3. You know, you don't have to have perfection. But it still has to be reasonable and believable. And that genuinely made me angry. Someone firing off 5 hand crossbow bolts from a hand crossbow. It was magical, but it was not specifically designed to have a sped up fire, because there needs to be more than that in the description of a magic weapon. You know, you can't just say, oh, it's a magical weapon so he can fire more frequently. No, because it had nothing to do with the fact that he had a magic weapon. It would have worked just fine if he had a non-magical hand crossbow, because there were inherent abilities to the character. That takes me out of the simulation aspect of the game. And that's something that was pretty strict in 2nd edition and 1st edition and original Dungeons & Dragons. It's one of the reasons why they went with 1 minute, because you can always hand wave away. You know, it's kind of like the, you know, being hot or cold. If you're hot, there's only so much clothing you can take off to cool down. If you're cold, you can keep bundling more on. Admittedly, if it's incredibly cold, there's a limit there, but, you know, if it's 40 degrees, you can put on a sweater. You know, you can put on another jacket, you can put on some long underwear kind of thing. you know, there are things that you can easily do to warm up when you're cold, whereas if it's the hotter it gets, the less you can do. So with a too long combat round, there's more hand waving you can do. You can say, "Oh, the combat itself didn't take 4 minutes, the 4 round combat. There's just some, you know, time afterwards that, you know, all right, the last foe is done. Ooh, boy. Oh, all right, you okay over there? How are you doing? Oh, you need a bandage? All right, let's, you know, some talking after the combat, whatever. Okay, and then total time, 4 minutes. So you could do some hand waving there. You know, it's not actually 1 minute each round, but after the combat, you total it up, and the total time is 4 minutes. It's easier to do that than, say, you know, than hit a point where it's like 6-second combat round. Okay, now we have to say, you know, just get out of the believability factor of how many shots you can actually take with a missile weapon in that time period. And that really gets to where I see the design philosophies of earlier Dungeons & Dragons and later Dungeons & Dragons. And that ultimately is why I like 2nd edition. I think that it is the pinnacle of streamlining of the balance between game rules and simulation and all that sort of thing. And it's not insistent on a certain kind of artificial balance. There is a balance in the game. Warriors are fantastic at just getting up and fighting things physically, using missile weapons or things like that, and being great physical warriors. But they don't have a whole lot of special abilities. Whereas a wizard is balanced in that they have very poor physical abilities, but their special abilities are, you know, similar to a fighter is just incredible at that. A wizard is incredible at the special abilities. So it's that kind of balance without the artificial balance of a warrior is equal to a wizard or something like that. Or, you know, we have to give the warriors all these special abilities to balance out the fact that the priest has all these special abilities, or the wizard has all these special abilities. I'm not a fan of that. I prefer that other type of balance, the balance that 2nd edition has. So I hope that answered your question. And we come to the last question in this section from Blaze Summoner. What is your favorite book novel? That's pretty easy. Hands down, Watership Down. Unconditionally my favorite novel of all time. That is just an amazing, amazing piece of literature. Never read anything better in my life. And I've read a lot of novels. Admittedly, I'm not a fan of generally non-fantasy novels very much. So, you know, people can certainly, you know, may take issue with it. But I think, for me, Watership Down is absolutely the best book I have ever read. If you want to talk nonfiction, that would be almost impossible to say, because there's a lot of history books that I've picked up over the years that have been great and stuff like that. So, I might be forced to say something like Herodotus's History would be the best. So that brings us to the end of that section. Now on to questions that are just, you know, fun, silly, random, enjoyable things, perhaps a little bit trolly. Getter77 asks, what are the greatest heights of barbecue in your estimation? Absolutely, New York barbecue, of course. Next question, Daza. If you continue for another 7 years, you will have to change your channel's name to AuldDragon. I already am too old. Andrew Lynch asks, I guess that was more of a comment, but whatever. I found it funny. Andrew Lynch asks, do dragons taste of ham? No. Dragons are poisonous. Do not eat us. Don't check that either. It doesn't end well. You can eat ham, though. That's okay. Pupinel asks, If by some very strange chain of events you end up on a very bizarre planet and there is no meat to eat, oh, perish the thought! I'd probably die of starvation. You can choose 5 veggies, berries, fruits to eat for the rest of your life. What would they be? Alright, the first thing that I would do is I would genetically engineer some variety of fruit to taste like ham. I guess failing that, I don't really know. Like 5 exactly, I don't know. Probably, I mean, on the veggie side, since you didn't say grain, I guess I can't include grain, because I'd be all over the bread and pasta, but then again, you know, there wouldn't be any, you know, without meat, then you're also not talking about dairy, so it means no cream sauces for vegetables. Oh, this is just like a really, really awful location. Oh. In terms of vegetables, and fruits, probably some combination of carrots, broccoli, which I'm not really a fan of broccoli unless it's with a sauce. Romaine lettuce, peas, and cucumbers. Oh, corn. Corn, actually. I can't believe that I didn't think of that. Although corn is a grain. So I guess that doesn't really count. Yeah, alright. Would peas count? I mean, they're a legume. I don't know, whatever. It's kind of like how tomatoes are a botanical fruit, but they're a culinary vegetable, I guess. But no, not tomatoes. No, definitely not tomatoes. And then on the fruit side, Granny Smith or Golden Delicious apples, honeydew, Moroccan clementines, which are by far the best oranges. Specifically Moroccan clementines. Don't ask me why. I could not tell you. Strawberries and white grapes. Some combination of those would probably be okay. I suppose I would survive for a little bit longer without meat. Without ham. Oh, just... The idea, though, is terrible. Next up, we've got a question from Ashley. Why do you like vanilla ice cream, especially since it's the most boring ice cream? Perish the thought, heathen! Heretic! Ugh. Vanilla ice cream is the best ice cream, unconditionally, unless, of course, it has vanilla beans in it, and that's just awful. That's just terrible. That's just, no. Creamy vanilla ice cream is fantastic. That's not to say I don't enjoy occasional dips into other things. Strawberry ice cream is pretty good. Chocolate chip cookie dough is fantastic. Not really... I don't really dig chocolate ice cream much. It's a little too much chocolate. I'm the type of person that, like, 3 Hershey's Kisses is probably enough chocolate for a day. So, unless the chocolate has, like, peanut butter with it, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, I can eat a bag of those in a day, which is terrible because they're filled with sugar. But yeah, vanilla ice cream is unconditionally the best ice cream. Anyone who says otherwise is wrong, and they should feel bad about it. Haagen-Dazs is really good. I love Haagen-Dazs. Costco has really good vanilla ice cream, but it is really heavy. Edie's vanilla ice cream is pretty good, and it's kind of lighter and fluffier. It's not too bad. I actually kind of like the generic brand from my local grocery store too. It's not too bad. But yeah, if it has vanilla beans in it, no. I don't know why that changes the taste so much, but it's just not good. I can also take caramel on like caramel sauce or caramel mixed in. That's okay. But again, that's more of an occasional thing. Too much of that, and that's just like too much. Whereas, like, you could put an enormous tub of vanilla ice cream in front of me, and I would probably eat it if you didn't stop me from doing so, or if I failed my self-control checks. And why did you have to ask this question? Because now I want vanilla ice cream, and I don't have any. I am so sad now. And the final question from Asher Vandal, who plays Higamus in the Spelljammer campaign on Saturdays. Do check that out if you haven't. Gotta get my plugs in. He asks, what's the best way to get the dragon turtle shell off and onto the barge? First of all, cheat hacks. Second of all, a wish spell, of course. Thank you guys for coming along for the Q&A session. I hope you enjoyed the questions, and almost 2 hours. Pretty amazing. This was fun. Great questions. I loved it. Not many overlapping questions, which was amazing and fantastic. No criticism to those who did ask questions that were the same. That's perfectly fine. That's why I mention names every single time, because I wanted to specifically get you guys in there. But the fact that there were so few overlapping questions, to me, tells me that a lot of people had, a lot of different things that they wanted to ask. And I love that. I enjoyed that. Thank you guys for all the questions. I hope you enjoyed the answers. I definitely enjoyed giving them. Thank you all for making 10,000 subscribers possible, and keep watching. And don't forget to support me on Patreon if you can. Thank you!